Have you ever felt like you're here, but you don't belong? Have you looked around and realized that everything seems distant, as if you were watching life from the outside? Have you caught yourself smiling out of politeness while inside? A voice whispers that none of it makes sense. Have you pretended interest in conversations that seem completely empty? Have you forced enthusiasm for achievements that don't touch you? Have you woken up feeling like you're living someone else's life? It's not depression. It's not ordinary tiredness. It's something deeper and more frightening. It's the moment when you realize you don't want to be part of this world anymore. And when that happens, something inside you changes forever. You might still stay here, but never in the same way again. This awakening doesn't arrive screaming. It comes silently, in the small things. An empty conversation you pretended to find interesting. A social event where you feel completely out of place. A work day where you execute tasks that mean absolutely nothing. It's the slow and painful realization that the rhythm of the world doesn't match the rhythm of your soul. People talk, but you can't connect with what they say. They laugh, but the humor seems forced and artificial. They celebrate achievements that, to you, seem completely empty. And gradually you understand something both liberating and terrifying. It's not that you're wrong. It's that you see something they don't see. You see through the layers, through the masks, through the illusions that sustain everyone's lives around you. This feeling doesn't arise overnight. It's built over years of silent observation, of nights trying to understand why you don't fit in, of mornings waking up with the sensation of playing a character that isn't you. You spent years thinking the problem was yours, that you needed to try harder to adapt. But now you realize the problem was never you. It was trying to fit into a mold that was never made for who you really are. There's a crucial difference that few people understand. Giving up is not the same thing as no longer identifying. Giving up is losing hope. It's surrendering to defeat. Not identifying is gaining clarity. It's seeing beyond the illusions that sustain the world. And if you're going through a moment like this, seek help. When you realize you don't want to be part of this system anymore, it doesn't mean you're weak or defeated. It means you woke up. You saw through the masks, the empty promises, the narratives that everyone accepts without questioning. And once you see, you can't pretend you don't see anymore. This distancing isn't escape, it's self-preservation. It's your emotional system saying that continuing on this path will destroy what remains authentic in you. It's your essence refusing to participate in a game where the rules were made to keep you trapped, productive, and obedient. Validating this feeling isn't encouraging isolation. It's recognizing that preserving your sanity sometimes requires saying no to what everyone considers normal. Deep people feel this with an intensity that almost hurts physically. It's not that they're better than others, it's that they process reality in a completely different way. They can't turn off their perception, can't ignore the glaring contradictions, can't pretend enthusiasm for superficial things that everyone seems to accept without questioning. While others navigate life's surface without questioning much, these people dive deep and see the entire structure underneath. The fakeness disguised as politeness in relationships, the cruelty normalized as healthy competition, the deep collective loneliness hidden behind perfect smiles on social media, the existential emptiness masked by compulsive consumption. This sensitivity isn't a defect. It's a different and more complex form of consciousness. It's like having a more sensitive antenna that picks up frequencies that others don't perceive, don't want to perceive, or have learned to ignore. You feel the hidden sadness in someone's voice who says they're fine. You notice the deep loneliness in crowded environments. You see the existential emptiness behind material achievements that everyone celebrates as if they were the answer to everything. You feel the weight of social lies that everyone agreed to sustain. And this is deeply exhausting. Because the modern world wasn't made for those who feel deeply. It was made for those who consume quickly, produce constantly, and obey without questioning much. This consciousness comes at a high price. You can't watch certain programs without feeling the emptiness behind the entertainment. You can't participate in trivial conversations without feeling like you're wasting the minutes of your life. You can't celebrate victories that required sacrificing your integrity. And people around you don't understand. To them, you're complicated, difficult, too intense. But the truth is, you simply can't live on the surface anymore. Once you've tasted depth, shallowness becomes unbearable. The world demands that everyone always be okay. Productive, sociable, optimistic, inspiring. It's a constant emotional performance that exhausts any minimally conscious person. You need to arrive at work smiling even if you spent the night without sleeping. You need to be positive on social media even when inside you're falling apart. You need to pretend interest in subjects that don't matter, enthusiasm for projects that don't make sense, joy in celebrations that seem empty. This mask becomes so heavy that it reaches a point where you can't sustain it anymore. The fatigue you feel doesn't just come from work or responsibilities. It comes from this daily effort of being someone you're not, from repressing what you really feel to fit into others' expectations, from smiling when you want to scream, from agreeing when you want to question, from participating when you just want to disappear. And when you realize you need to pretend to be someone else to belong, something inside you breaks. And that's when the withdrawal begins. Nobody can live an entire life pretending. The soul has limits. And when that limit is exceeded, the body and mind begin to charge the price. You wake up tired, even after sleeping. You feel constant anxiety without apparent reason. You get sick frequently. You lose interest in things you once loved. And nobody connects these symptoms with the true cause. You're trying to survive in an environment that wasn't made for you. The world has accelerated in a way that completely disrespects human rhythms. Notifications every second, impossible goals, tight deadlines, constant comparisons. You need to respond fast, decide fast, produce fast. There's no space to feel, to think, to simply exist without a productive function. And people who need time to process, to reflect, to digest experiences, feel completely out of place in this insane rhythm. When you realize you don't want to be part of the world anymore, often it's not life you're rejecting. It's this artificial speed that doesn't respect that you're human, not a machine. It's this rhythm that demands you always be available, always active, always performing. It's this culture that treats rest as laziness and introspection as unproductivity. You're not tired of living. You're tired of living this way. Slowing down, in this context, isn't failure. It's wisdom. It's recognizing that you have limits, that you need pauses, that your soul functions at a different time than business time. It's understanding that productivity can't be the only measure of human value, that you don't need to prove anything to anyone, that there's life beyond the rush, there's meaning beyond achievements, there's peace beyond visible success. If you're enjoying this content, you might also like our exclusive material that's in the first pinned comment. But perhaps the deepest pain isn't the insane rhythm, but rather the devastating perception that human relationships have become completely transactional. You look around and realize that friendships only exist when there's mutual convenience, that people approach affectionately when they need something and disappear silently when you're the one who needs. That love became an implicit performance contract where you're only loved while you meet specific expectations. That even the most intimate connections are secretly measured by utility, not by genuine affection. That you're valued for what you offer, not for who you are. This perception hurts in a deep way that's hard to explain to someone who's never felt it. Because you realize you spent years, maybe decades, emotionally investing in people who were only there for what you offered, not for who you really were. That you maintained completely empty relationships out of paralyzing fear of being alone. That you confused physical presence with real emotional connection, casual company with true intimacy. And when you finally see this clearly, you can't pretend you don't see anymore. You prefer honest and conscious solitude to empty and false company. And people around you call this withdrawal, emotional coldness, selfishness. But it's just mature emotional discernment. Sensitive people perceive when a friendship is real and when it's just convenient. They feel when someone truly cares and when they're just following social protocol. And instead of adapting and accepting emotional crumbs, they prefer to be alone. Because chosen solitude hurts less than false company. Because being alone with your truth is better than being surrounded by lies. And no, this isn't misanthropy. It's just refusing to accept less than you deserve. The problem is the world reads this withdrawal as a personal problem. As if you were antisocial, difficult, problematic. Nobody questions whether maybe the problem is the quality of connections being offered. Whether maybe people are so conditioned to superficial relationships that when they meet someone seeking depth, they don't know how to handle it. Whether maybe you're not rejecting people, but rejecting the fakeness that became acceptable. Another deeply painful aspect of this awakening is realizing how the world has systematically emptied deep concepts and transformed them into packaged and priced consumer products. Life purpose became a 6-module online course. Authentic vocation became a profitable market niche. Love became a measurable relationship metric with rules and strategies. Spirituality became a sellable aesthetic for Instagram with crystals and incense. Self-knowledge became a weekend workshop. Everything that should be deeply personal and non-transferable was packaged, priced, and sold as a quick solution for those who can pay. And when you awaken to this, you feel existential nausea. Because you see people shamelessly selling life purpose in 6 recorded modules with a certificate at the end. You see coaches promising radical transformation in 30 days with an exclusive method. You see spiritual influencers cynically monetizing others' pain while selling expensive retreats. And you realize that even the deepest meaning of existence was completely co-opted by the capitalist system. That finding your purpose became just another productivity requirement cleverly disguised as spirituality. One more thing you need to achieve: publicly prove, display on social media. Rejecting this narrative isn't cynicism. It's refusal to accept manufactured meaning. It's understanding that purpose isn't something you buy or find in a workshop. It's something that emerges from your lived experience, from your pains, from your choices, from your silence. It can't be packaged, sold, or taught in ready-made formulas. And accepting this means giving up the illusion of control, the promise of quick solutions, the comfort of having a clear path. It means entering the void without guarantees, and few have courage for that. One of the most painful and isolating experiences of those who don't want to be part of the world anymore is deep existential loneliness. You can be physically in a room completely full of people and feel absolutely alone at a level nobody there reaches. Because nobody seems to see what you see so clearly. Nobody seems to feel what you feel so intensely. You try to share your most honest perceptions and people look at you as if you were exaggerating dramatically, being too negative, complicating simple things. And gradually you learn to stay quiet about what you really think, to keep your deepest truths, to live in a complex internal world that nobody else accesses or understands. This loneliness happens when you awaken to certain truths while the world continues sleeping comfortably. When you question structures that everyone accepts passively. When you feel deeply while everyone lives comfortably on the shallow surface. And there's no one to genuinely accompany you on this journey of consciousness, because most people actively avoid looking at the same uncomfortable truths you can't ignore anymore. They consciously prefer constant distraction, empty entertainment, collective and comfortable denial. And you don't judge them for that choice, but you also can't participate in this denial that everyone tacitly agreed to sustain. This is one of the deepest lonelinesses that exist. It's not the loneliness of being physically alone. It's the loneliness of being conscious in the midst of an unconscious crowd. It's feeling like you speak a language nobody else understands. It's carrying perceptions that nobody validates. And this loneliness doesn't resolve with more social contact. It only resolves when you find other people who also awakened. And these people are rare. But when you find them, you realize you weren't crazy, that your perceptions are real. That you're not alone in this way of seeing the world. Often, long before the conscious mind accepts that you don't want to be part of the world anymore, the body is already desperately screaming this. Deep chronic fatigue without convincing medical explanation. Constant and penetrating anxiety that doesn't pass with any technique. Persistent insomnia that no medicine can completely resolve. Unexplainable physical pains that mysteriously migrate through the body without apparent cause. Autoimmune diseases that appear out of nowhere. Weakened immune system that leaves you vulnerable. These aren't signs of physical or mental weakness. They're urgent signs that your deepest essence is actively rejecting an environment that has become completely toxic to your nature. The body is deeply wise in ways the rational mind still doesn't fully understand. It instinctively knows when you're fundamentally betraying yourself. When you're forcing your nature too much, pretending too much who you're not. Repressing too much what you feel. And it insistently warns you through increasingly severe physical symptoms. But you systematically ignore these warnings. You take medicine after medicine, do exam after exam, seek diagnosis after diagnosis. Any physical medical explanation is more socially acceptable than admitting the deep psychological truth. You don't belong here anymore. Your body is literally asking, begging for you to leave, for you to stop completely, for you to radically reconsider everything. These symptoms aren't the problem. They're the message. And the more you ignore the message, the louder the body screams, until it reaches a point where you have no choice. Either you listen or you collapse. And often it's the collapse that finally forces the change you've been postponing for years. The body says no when you still don't have the courage to say it. It forces you to stop when you're still trying to push through. It's the first to recognize you don't belong here anymore, long before your mind accepts this truth. And when you finally listen to the body, when you validate its symptoms as legitimate messages and not as failures, something begins to change. You stop fighting against yourself. You begin to respect your limits. You understand that leaving toxic environments isn't weakness, it's survival. That resting isn't laziness, it's necessity. That your body knows things your rational mind is still trying to deny. Along with all these physical and emotional symptoms comes deep and paralyzing guilt. Devastating guilt for not wanting what you should want according to everyone. Persistent guilt for not valuing what absolutely everyone values. Corrosive guilt for not feeling genuine enthusiasm for material achievements that should magically make you happy. You look around and see people effusively celebrating work promotions, bigger houses, new cars, exotic trips, social media followers, and you feel absolutely nothing. Or worse yet, you feel deep existential emptiness. And you think with anguish, what is fundamentally wrong with me? This guilt is emotionally devastating because it goes against absolutely everything you've been taught since childhood. They repeatedly told you that professional success brings automatic happiness. That social recognition brings personal value. That material consumption brings lasting satisfaction. That public status brings inner peace. And you tirelessly pursued these things, sometimes managed to conquer some of them, and realized with horror that absolutely nothing changed inside. The existential emptiness remained intact. The lack of meaning stayed unchanged. And now you carry the heavy guilt of not being able to be happy with what should be more than enough according to the dominant social narrative. But this guilt comes from social conditioning, not from a real failure. You were programmed to desire certain things, to measure value in certain ways, to define success in specific terms. And when these things don't fulfill you, you think the problem is you. But the problem is the program. It's the narrative they sold you. It's the idea that there's a right path, a happiness formula, a recipe for a good life. And this idea is a lie. Freeing yourself from this guilt is essential to building an authentic life. You need to understand there's nothing wrong with wanting peace instead of achievements, in valuing time instead of money, in seeking meaning instead of status, in choosing depth instead of visibility. You're not defective for not fitting into dominant values. You're just different, and different isn't wrong. Society has a cruel narrative. When something doesn't work for you, the problem is you. You need to adapt. You're too sensitive. You don't try hard enough. You need to change your mindset. You're being negative. And gradually you internalize this and spend your life trying to fix something that was never broken. But sometimes the problem isn't you. It's the system. We live in a society that values competition over collaboration, productivity over well-being, appearance over essence, speed over depth. And if you don't do well in this environment, it doesn't mean you're inadequate. It means the environment is inadequate for you. Recognizing this isn't victimhood. It's lucidity. It's understanding that not all environments serve all people, and that seeking another path is courage, not maladjustment. When you realize the system is the problem, you stop trying to fix yourself and begin to question the system. You stop blaming yourself for not prospering in a sick environment and begin seeking healthier environments. Or better yet, you begin creating your own environment, with your own rules, based on your own values. And this is revolutionary, because the system needs you to believe the problem is you. That way you keep trying to fit in, keep consuming solutions, keep participating. But when you see the problem is the system, you free yourself from guilt and gain power to change your path. Part of what keeps people trapped is the culture of forced positivity. The idea that you should always be grateful, always happy, always seeing the good side. That sadness is weakness. That questioning is being negative. That feeling disillusionment is lack of perspective. This toxic positive thinking culture invalidates legitimate emotions and creates even more suffering by imposing that you have no right to feel what you feel. Deep people reject this emotional superficiality because they know that sadness, disillusionment, and questioning are valid human responses. That not everything needs to have a good side. That sometimes things are simply bad, and you have the right to recognize that. That forcing gratitude when you're suffering isn't mental health, it's repression disguised as self-care. That denying your real emotions to maintain a positive facade is violence against yourself. You don't need to always be okay. You don't need to transform all pain into learning. You don't need to find meaning in everything that happens. Sometimes things don't make sense. Sometimes you're just tired, disillusioned, lost. And that's okay. You're not less evolved for feeling this. You're human. And being human includes the capacity to feel the complete range of emotions, not just the ones that are socially acceptable. When you distance yourself from toxic environments, superficial people, and unrealistic expectations, you're not running away. You're protecting yourself. This is psychological self-preservation, not character failure. People who choose conscious seclusion aren't giving up on life. They're saving what remains authentic in them. They're creating a safe space where they can exist without masks, without performances, without having to prove anything. This withdrawal doesn't need to be permanent. Sometimes you just need time. Time to reconnect with who you really are. Time to heal the wounds from years of trying to fit in. Time to rebuild your relationship with yourself. And this time is sacred. Don't let anyone rush you. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for needing this space. Your sanity is worth more than others' opinions about your choices. But there's a danger in this process, the temptation of nihilism. When you realize the emptiness of so many things the world values, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing nothing matters, that everything is empty, that there's no meaning in anything, and this path leads only to despair and paralysis. There's a crucial difference between rejecting social illusions and denying all possible meaning. You can recognize that dominant values are empty without concluding that all values are empty. You can see through collective narratives without losing the capacity to create your own narrative. You can give up what doesn't make sense without giving up everything. The challenge is transitioning from this painful awakening to the construction of your own meaning. Not the meaning the world offers, but the meaning your soul really needs. And this requires time, patience, and courage. Nihilism is tempting because it offers a simple explanation for pain. Nothing matters, so there's no reason to suffer. But this is a false solution. Because you're still here, alive, feeling. And while you feel, while you exist, meaning is possible. Not a universal meaning, not an absolute truth, but a meaning constructed by you, validated by your experience, true for your journey. And this meaning doesn't need to be grandiose. It can be simple, creating beauty, alleviating suffering, connecting authentically, living with integrity. Part of this painful process of not wanting to be part of the world anymore involves deep and radical detachment. Devastating detachment from social identities that were never genuinely yours. From constant external approval that never truly fulfilled you. From ambitious dreams that were artificially planted in you by others, not organically born from you. And this detachment hurts intensely, like psychological death. Because it seems you're losing absolutely everything that defined you. But actually, you're consciously releasing what was never really yours from the beginning. You progressively release the rigid idea of who you should be according to everyone, and finally begin to discover who you really are beneath the layers. You gradually release the desperate need for external approval, and slowly find genuine internal validation. You painfully release borrowed dreams from others and create empty space for authentic desires to emerge naturally. And the more you consciously release what isn't truly yours, the lighter you feel emotionally, more free existentially, more yourself essentially. But reaching this liberating point requires courageously traversing the deep discomfort of not knowing exactly who you are, without all these false layers you carried for years. This process of detachment is solitary. Nobody can do it for you. Nobody can tell you what to release and what to keep. You need to feel in your body, in your heart, in your soul, what is authentic and what is borrowed. You need to have courage to disappoint people, to break expectations, to let down those who thought you would be something you're not. And this is scary. because it means losing belonging. But the belonging you lose was conditional, and what you gain is the possibility of belonging to yourself. After the necessary withdrawal, after the painful detachment, inevitably arises the existential need to rebuild meaning completely outside of ready-made collective narratives. And this is where true inner courage is required from you. Because there's no ready-made manual. There's no path paved by others. You're literally creating something new and unique, based deeply on authentic internal values, not on conditioned external pressures. And this means courageously living without constant social validation, without ready cultural scripts, without reassuring guarantees that you're doing it right according to established standards. This existential reconstruction is deeply slow and often frustrating. You don't miraculously wake up one day with all the clear answers. You're carefully groping in the inner darkness, experimenting with possibilities, constantly making mistakes, continuously adjusting. You're gradually discovering what genuinely nourishes you and what subtly drains you, what truly brings you peace and what artificially agitates you, what has authentic meaning for you, completely independent of making sense to others. And gradually, you're patiently building a life that perhaps absolutely nobody fully understands, but that is deeply and undeniably yours. And this life, however inevitably solitary, is infinitely more true than any life lived automatically in blind conformity. This reconstruction is also deeply transformative, because you stop living reactively and start living creatively. You stop accepting what they give you and start choosing what you want. You stop seeking to fit in and start creating your own space. And this change, though invisible to others' eyes, is the true revolution. It's where real autonomy is born. Not financial or practical autonomy, but existential autonomy. The capacity to exist on your own terms. And here's one of the most liberating insights. It's possible to exist without belonging. You can move through the world without submitting to it. Be present without losing yourself. Participate without selling out. This is a delicate art, but possible. You create a selective relationship with society. You choose what serves, reject what sickens. You participate in what makes sense, absent yourself from what doesn't. This balance is hard to maintain because the pressures are constant. The world wants your complete conformity, not your selective participation. But you learn to navigate. You learn to say yes when you want, and no when you need. You learn to be in environments without absorbing their toxic energies. You learn to protect yourself without completely isolating yourself. And this capacity to be in the world without being of the world is what allows survival while maintaining integrity. You don't need to choose between total alienation and blind submission. There's a third path: conscious and selective presence. You're here, but you're not available for everything. You participate, but not in anything. You connect, but not with anyone. And this selectivity isn't arrogance. It's care for your energy, for your peace, for your essence. It's recognizing you have limits and that respecting them is more important than pleasing others. One of the most comforting discoveries on this path is realizing there are others like you. Other foreigners. Other people who also don't belong, who also question, who also feel deeply. And when you find these people, something changes. You realize you weren't crazy, that your perceptions are shared by others, that there's an invisible community of people who chose to live outside dominant narratives. These connections are rare, but deep, because they're based on truth, not convenience, on mutual recognition, not interest. When you find someone who also sees through the illusions, who also feels the weight of consciousness, who also chose to preserve their authenticity even if it means loneliness, you experience a type of connection that superficial relationships will never offer. And one of these connections is worth more than hundreds of empty relationships. Not belonging to the world doesn't mean eternal loneliness. It means conscious selectivity. It means quality over quantity. It means you're not available for anyone, but you're completely available for those who deserve it. And when you find these people, you realize the loneliness of awakening had a purpose: to prepare you to recognize true connections when they appeared. Because only those who know deep loneliness know how to value real company. The emptiness that remains when you distance yourself from the world is scary. It seems you lost everything and gained nothing in return. But this emptiness doesn't need to be filled immediately. It can be honored as a space of gestation, like fallow land that rests to later produce with more strength. This emptiness isn't death. It's pause. It's the necessary silence before something new can be born. The mistake is trying to fill this emptiness quickly, with new projects, new goals, new distractions, anything to not feel the discomfort of emptiness. But emptiness has something to teach. It shows you that you can exist without constantly doing, that you're more than your achievements, that there's life in silence, in not doing, in simply being. And this is revolutionary in a world that measures value by productivity. When you learn to inhabit this emptiness without fear, something interesting happens. You begin to hear your own voice. Not others' voices, not social expectations, but your deepest voice. The one that was silenced for years by external noise. And this voice has important things to say. About who you are, about what you want, about how you want to live. But it can only speak in silence. And that's why emptiness is fertile. It's where new forms of living, feeling, and creating can be born, in the right time. Consciously choosing not to be part of the dominant world is one of the most existentially courageous acts possible, because it means voluntarily giving up social security, constant collective approval, comforting tribal belonging, 3 things every human being instinctively and deeply desires. But it also means definitively giving up living a comfortable lie, indefinitely playing a character that isn't you, continuously betraying your deepest essence to fit in a social mold that was never made for who you really are. And when you honestly weigh these losses and gains on the existential scale, you realize the true courage is in courageously choosing personal truth, even if it's deeply solitary and socially misunderstood. This radical choice brings an inner freedom few people truly experience in life. The existential freedom to live according to your own authentic truth, not according to inherited scripts from others. To make daily choices based on genuine internal values, not conditioned external pressures. To wake up in the morning and be yourself completely, without social masks, without calculated performances, without strategic pretenses. And this freedom, though completely invisible to superficial outside eyes, is the only one that truly matters deeply. Because it's the fundamental freedom to be who you really are, not who they conditionally want you to be. This journey is inevitably solitary. I won't romanticize or lie about that. There are no comforting guarantees you'll find your true tribe. There are no written promises that everything will make perfect sense in the end. There's no official certificate that you chose absolutely right. But there's something infinitely more valuable than all of that together. There's you, finally whole, genuinely true, radically free. There's the real possibility of living a life that perhaps absolutely nobody publicly applauds, but that is deeply and undeniably yours. And that, at the end of everything, is the only meaning that truly matters existentially. Not the meaning the external world socially validates, but the meaning your deepest soul instinctively recognizes as true. When you realize you don't want to be part of the world anymore, it's not the tragic end of anything. It's the courageous beginning of everything. The beginning of a life lived authentically from the inside out, not automatically from the outside in. The beginning of an existential journey where you definitively stop seeking to belong externally and finally begin to belong deeply to yourself. And this journey, however solitary and difficult it inevitably is the sacred path of those who consciously choose to be real instead of comfortably accepted, of those who courageously choose truth instead of security, of those who radically choose integrity instead of superficial approval. And in the end, that's what fundamentally separates those who truly live from those who merely survive mechanically. If this content touched something deep in you, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more reflections like this. Share with someone who's also on this solitary journey of seeking authenticity in a world that values perfect masks. And always remember, feeling like you don't belong to this world doesn't mean there's something fundamentally wrong with you. Maybe it just means you were made for a completely different world, a more true world you'll have to courageously create. And this creation begins now, at this exact moment, when you firmly decide that being true is infinitely more important than being universally accepted.